This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? Let's do this. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily for a Wednesday afternoon here in late August. Great to have you with us, Andrew Paterson, along with Michael Remis. Coming up on today's program, we've got Farhan Lalji of TSN. Farhan will be catching up on the horn in a few minutes. And then Andy McNamara, the only guy with more energy than Nate Schmidt, is going to join us coming up a little later on. We'll get the latest from NFL training camps. We'll get some fantasy advice from Andy and just have fun with Andy as we always do. Before we get going, big shout out to our sponsors, Canadian Club Whiskey. Great to have them on board. Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Paramount Services Limited, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Band, Assiniboia Downs, and Coolbet Canada. We've got lots to get to, but first off, welcome everybody that is in the spot. I see, oh, my guy Francois there. Hustler, let's go. Pump for the upcoming Bombers games. I am as well. We see Destruction here, Dallas, Todd. The boys are here. Sean Lishka. Great turnout right off the bat. And, of course, Dallas is here. Wayne Jones, way across the sea. Great to have you with us. And the entire crew, Jetto, Tom, Leslie, Sandy, and G. Larry, the sports guy. Let's get on it. Let's welcome in Michael Remis as we started off. Remo, how are you, my friend? What's going on?
I'm feeling good here. Just getting the tweets sent, letting everyone know, hey, we're here. We're live. And if you're not following us, Sports Talk WPG on every social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We could use a couple more follows on Insta and Facebook. Link to those in the description of the video. But yeah, what's going on? Thanks for having me here.
Great to see everybody out. Was a fun show yesterday. Lots of action in the chat, and we'll I'm sure have some more time for some of that fun. Hey, dude, before we begin, and we gave out some thank yous yesterday to people that jumped on the hat release that we did with Royal Sports right off the bat. I know Chris picked one up today. Chris Becken fired us a message that he got the last dad hat at Royal Sports. I believe there's 4 snapbacks left, and we've had a number of people order online. And man, we've got to be getting close to basically, at least on the dad hat part of it, getting most of those out the door already. So can't get over the amazing response to it. And again, big thanks to Greg and Gerald over at Royal for helping us make it happen, and the guys at New Era. But yes, if you are looking especially on the dad hat side of things, get to the website because there's only a few more, and they're going out faster than they were coming in.
Yeah, we've had a number of out-of-province orders for both hats. And yeah, I would say our website is your option now for the dad hats. There is a local pickup at our shipping depot. But yeah, very great positive response, and that's awesome to see. I was really happy, the way it came out, and putting this together was so much fun. So the hat drop, big success.
Yeah, speaking of the hat, there's my guy Les Thompson. What's up, Les? I know Les got one and actually bumped into my mom at Royal as well, who I think was getting it as well. So anyways, great to see everybody here. Now, we're going to get into some Bomber talk right off the bat before we welcome in Farho. I just see this comment from Dave B. Hey, Huss and Remo, was listening to Fan 960 this morning, and they were interviewing Dave Dickinson. He claimed the Bombers, quote, are physical because they make borderline illegal hits and lucky on special teams. I wish that segment was on the afternoon show when I'm on with Pat and Will and the guys, because that would have been a fun conversation to have. The Calgary Stampeders whining about the Bombers, Remis, before we even get to Sunday's game?
It's that Winnipeg Mafia. Us, isn't that the line? And yeah, real lucky to have the all-time CFL special teams leader in tackles, Mike Miller, and he was sporting, or a lot of his teammates today at practice sporting a 24 Blue Bomber T-shirt with a gold goat on it. So I don't think you become the all-time special teams leader in tackles by getting lucky. Last time I checked, Hust, I think you have to be very good for a long period of time.
Yeah, the Bombers' special teams has been elite for the last few years, and the kicking game has been a big part of it, and Justin Medlock. But I mean, there was a number of things that Mike O'Shea has improved significantly from the first year or two of, the Walters O'Shea regime, and special teams has been a big part of that. So, whatever. Dave Dickinson trying to stir things up a little bit, get some bulletin board material inside the officials' room potentially. We'll look forward to a great game. And, let's start off with the Bombers because, as you mentioned, the guys on the field today sporting those 24 jerseys with the gold goat, a tribute to Mike Miller. And it is just, it blows my mind, Reem, that Mike Miller's now the all-time special teams tackles leaders. But a few years ago, that was held by Wade Miller, another former Winnipeg Blue Bomber that, of course, is now running the football team. They have found some incredible special teams demons for a long time, and Wade really established himself in the CFL as a go-to guy on special teams that could also help out in other ways. And I mean, Mike Miller has been the special teams demon year after year after year for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and it seemed like it was only a matter of time before he was going to get that record and then get rewarded with his teammates showing some love with those gold goat shirts.
Yeah, haven't you heard the long, going phrase, takes one to know one? And I guess it took a Wade Miller to find a Mike Miller, and there he is with the gold goat T-shirts. Everyone's sporting them at practice, so well done. They did have a nice, they showed it during the game as well on the weekend. And there he is. He keeps just hunting guys down on special teams, making those tackles. Well done.
Well, so the big news out of practice, apparently, is that Andrew Harris is practicing with the first team. Andrew Harris has been sidelined for the majority of training camp and early in this season. We did see the Bombers put out a tweet last week with Harris catching passes in practice in a closed practice with the old eyes emoji that always gets everyone going on social media. But it was interesting, speaking especially of social media, Remis, that Harris dropped a bit of can we call it a cryptic post yesterday? Something about patience is a virtue and good things come to those who wait. Well, he's been waiting a lot, and it does sound like Andrew Harris is ready to get back on the field. And, I know Brady Oliveira had a great game in week number 1, but it is quite clear that, the Bombers are missing Andrew Harris right now. They've got a nice succession plan. They've got a talented young Canadian running back that, will be there in the future. But I don't think there's anybody that thinks a healthy Andrew Harris in the Bombers' backfield doesn't give them another big tool when it comes to moving the football and scoring points.
Yeah, and here it is from yesterday. Patience is a virtue. Hashtag relentless. And then you see Lucky Whitehead commenting. You got Showtime Sheed, Rashid Bailey commenting. Rashid Bailey with the 2 goat emoji. Lucky Whitehead's praying for Harris to get better. And we saw this yesterday. We're like, oh, what could this mean? What do we got here? Little practice. Nice pictures here that Andrew Harris is posting. And yes, there he was today practicing with the first team. He means so much as a guy who can carry the ball, a guy who can protect the pass game, and can, I think, receiving out of the backfield, absolutely huge as well. So I think we don't want to declare him in, but I think this cryptic post combined with him taking first team reps today, I think you can only take that as a positive, and that's a really good sign for the Bombers offense heading into Sunday against Dave Dickinson.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that. And another, I think, a real positive when it comes to the Harris situation is the fact that this game is on Sunday night. Usually the Bombers will be playing on Friday night or maybe Thursday or at the latest Saturday, but it's a Sunday 6 p.m. game. So the Bombers are going to be practicing right through Friday. Ed Tate, by the way, is going to join us on Friday, and we'll get kind of his take on what the roster is going to be looking like heading into the game and a little bit of an update on Andrew Harris and how much work that he's done. But the fact that he is taking these first team reps today, Reem, we'll be able to see practice tomorrow and on Friday. And if that continues to be the case, if he's back there tomorrow, if there's no setbacks, I certainly think it does look good for Andrew Harris to make his season debut in week 4, Sunday night at IG Field.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's only a good thing. And, as far as, other Winnipeggers participating in practice, Nick Dembski, he's still watching. And so he didn't play last week. We will wait and see about that. But I think having Andrew Harris, absolutely huge. Darren Bombing also has tweeted about some other Bombers participating, not participating. He said, as far as not participating, Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, Brandon Alexander, Darvin Adams, and Jake Thomas, among others. I think some of those guys have been playing even though they haven't been practicing. I think the one to watch here is Harris and Dembski because they didn't play last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Willie J, Jackson Jeffcoat, those guys will be getting the odd vet day off, especially considering Willie has been questionable for these games, really from the beginning of the season. So a few vet days for those guys, that's not going to change anything for Sunday, but you're exactly right. The availability of Nick Dembski and Andrew Harris will be big stories going forward. And even Darvin Adams, and that Darvin Adams played week 3, had missed weeks 1 and 2, and a Bomber team with Darvin Adams is a more dangerous Bomber team. So they'll want to, and I don't say put him in bubble wrap, but just make sure that he is as ready as possible to go and be in the game. And it would be really interesting to see how this Bomber team would look like if you could add in Dembski and add in Harris without taking anybody else out. I mean, certainly the roster would have the most tantalizing potential of anything we've seen from the Bombers so far this year. And considering what happened against Toronto, Reem, I think this is a big game for the Bomber offense to come back home, establish themselves, get the comfort of Zach Collaros going again, and start moving the football and putting up some points because they really struggled, especially in the first quarter of last game, and sort of dug themselves a hole that even with that defensive touchdown provided by the Bomber D was too much to dig out of.
Yeah, the offense they couldn't put it together. The first quarter, very rough. Didn't have a lot of possessions, but when they had them, they weren't getting first downs, weren't moving the football. They did have the big completion to Darvin Adams. We know Kenny Lawler can grab balls. So we'll wait and see. I think Andrew Harris would be a huge boost, and especially if you're playing fantasy. I mean, he's a dual threat. He's a runner. He's good in the receiving game. And I think this week against a division opponent like Calgary, who had a great bounce back last week against Montreal with the rookie quarterback, they're hungry. They want to get back to 2-2. But for the Bombers, I mean, even though they didn't play great and they got boosted by that defensive touchdown, I mean, it was still a 1-score game at the end. So I think you got to say, hey, we didn't play great, but we still gave ourselves a shot at the end. Couldn't do it, and we'll just come back again, back at home. Sunday Night Football. It'll be on ESPN2 in the U.S. I mean, get your fix of Sunday Night Football there. And, we'll see how it goes. I'm curious to see this Calgary quarterback, how he does in his second game.
Jake Meyer as well. Yeah, Dusty and I chopped it up on the Lock Shop talking about that game. It's interesting. It opened up at 41.5. Put the pick in for the Lock Shop at 42.5 over, and it's already at 44 today. I think we're basically going to see the same thing that happened last week with a line that opened at 41.5 that's going to end up at 45 or 46 by the time that we kick off. Nice comment from Dave B. Huss, one last thought. I'm from Winnipeg, live in Calgary. Hated when 1290 got shuttered. Listened every day. So glad you guys are doing this and absolutely love hearing you on 960 afternoons. Appreciate that, Dave. Let him know. We'll do it. Now, Huss, this is from Randy Wald. Is our old pal Liram Hajrullahu an option to return? I did get some comments on that, Reem, because, of course, we were talking about that in the last couple of days. When is Greg the Leg going to get healed, and when will Liram Hajrullahu presumably be cut? Well, that happened. He'll certainly be looking for some other NFL employment. But as we speculated, considering what's happened with the Bomber kicking game, if I'm Kyle Walters and there's a way to get it done within the cap, if the numbers can work, a guy like Liram Hajrullahu coming in to solidify the Bomber kicking game would be an immediate improvement that I think would have tangible results every game out.
Yeah, for sure. Veteran kicker. I mean, he's one of the most outstanding guys the last couple of years. He can kick it. He can definitely kick it deep. And you look at the way the Bombers, how tentative they've been for kicking. when, compared to the past seasons, they just don't have the trust in Krapina that they had in Justin Medlock. So, I mean, if you bring in Lirim, a guy that the organization knows, they've had him before, a guy who's had a lot of success, especially kicking deep, would be a huge boost to the Bombers. But the question is, does he want to go to the CFL, or is he still chasing that NFL? He's kind of bounced around a couple teams in the last year or two. You most recently in the CFL was on the Ticats, kicked very well. But I think it's going to be up to him if he wants to keep chasing that NFL dream or come home to the CFL. So I think it's something to monitor. I mean, I think the Bombers kicking game is something we're going to be watching probably all season, just because, I mean, Justin Medlock, one of the best kickers ever, that he's tough to replace. I mean, you get into past the 50, inside the 50, and it's okay. We've got basically free points here, and they just don't have that this year.
No, they don't. And Hairolahu, after leaving Winnipeg, has really turned into an elite CFL kicker and a guy that's had, time in the National Football League as well. So, if there's one area right now we've talked about, the turnover from last year that they really haven't been able to replace, and almost irreplaceable, that sort of consistency from Medlock. But certainly a boost in the special teams game would be big. Oh, I see DQ Nick's here. What's going on, Nick? Great to have him here. Got your hat, by the way. I'll get it to you very soon. We're going to talk about this with Farhan coming up in a few minutes, Reem, but amongst many topics in the Canadian Football League. But our pal Dave Naylor spoke with Commissioner Randy Ambrosie yesterday, and as things continue to develop and the CFL deals with this outbreak in Edmonton and the postponement of the game on Thursday, something that might have a far greater effect on CFL teams and especially unvaccinated players is the fact that this federal travel ban on unvaccinated players, from the understanding of the commissioner, is going to extend to charter flights, which means that unvaccinated players on CFL teams, from my understanding, will not be able to take the charter. Now, if you're in Argo and you're playing in Hamilton, that might not be that big of a deal. You could be able to get a bus. But out in the West, I mean, that's just not feasible or realistic. And I got to tell you, if this happens, it's just making it more and more difficult, I think, in no matter what you do, to not be vaccinated if you want to live somewhat of a normal life. But when it comes down to the Canadian Football League with the players, we know how hard they're working to get up to that 85% threshold. And we heard Mike O'Shea, I saw on social media, I didn't hear it on CJOB, but I heard people talking that the Bombers will be at 85% by very soon, and hopefully at 100% by Labor Day. So that's a great sign. That's not the case throughout the Canadian Football League. And you just wonder what the ramifications of this will be, Reem, if it does come into effect that, all of a sudden the holdouts on CFL rosters will have a tough time getting their game checks because they might not be able to get to the game.
Yeah, I think that's something to watch for, for CFL, for NHL. I see they're making it mandatory for flights, across Canada. So something to watch. I know, if you've got some comments over the last 24 hours that they want us to talk about the games, but this is, they just canceled or just postponed one of the games. Are we going to have more forfeits? And I think there are a lot of implications based on player vaccination rates in terms of, are they going to play? Are they going to receive their money? And even in the NFL too, you see guys having to sit out, due to protocol. So I think this is just something we're going to have to watch, going to be monitoring, I don't know, for the foreseeable future, I would say. So Farhan has more details on that as we head into him.
Yeah, the bottom line, it doesn't matter if you're a CFL team or an NFL team or soon to be a National Hockey League team. I think the squads that have have full buy-in from their players on the vaccine and it's not an issue anymore are just so far ahead. I just think back to what Zim is dealing with in Minnesota. The frustration that he showed when he's trying to get his football team ready to play a season, dealing with his quarterbacks all being quarantined because of a close contact and having them not even making the sort of money a guy like Kirk Cousins is making, being so resistant to getting it done is a problem. And it's probably an issue in the locker room amongst many players. And it's certainly a big time headache for the coaches and staff as they try to keep everybody safe and get them onto the field as a team to play the game. So as far as the CFL goes, a couple of major issues when it comes to what's happening in Edmonton, as well as a potential flight ban for unvaccinated players, is going to complicate things even more. We'll get to that with Farhan Lalji in just a few minutes. Not a ton of NHL news at all, Remis, but Derek Brassard gets a 1-year deal with the Flyers at $825K. There's been a while since we've had a signing, but this is pretty much par for the course going forward. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of PTOs for players, but a guy like Brassard made a lot of money, been in the league for a while, certainly I think has an opportunity to challenge for a spot on a roster. But if you're part of that lower class that's a little bit older, you're getting squeezed, and a lot of these guys are, going to be signing deals that don't start with a 1. They're going to be 6-figure deals under $1 million.
Yeah, I saw Dave McCarthy, our friend on SiriusXM. He was begging for some signings, some activities. Like, I got to do a 3-hour hockey show. I can't talk about Val Filppula signing in the Swiss League for 3 hours. And so there we have one. He played 53 games last year with the Coyotes. He had 20 points. It's a pretty respectable total. The year before, Islanders for a while. I remember when he was on, what was it, Pittsburgh, and the Jets were looking to acquire him at the deadline, and they got scooped by the Vegas Golden Knights. Wasn't there something? And the Jets ended up getting Stastny. I remember he was the hot name, or he was from. I was on Ottawa, and Pittsburgh scooped him from Ottawa at the deadline, and Vegas blocked him or something. I just remember that we were all fired up about Derek Brassard possibly coming to Winnipeg, and there he is signing with the Flyers. I'm not quite sure what the Flyers are doing, Huss, but I mean, 1-year deal for 6 figures for a veteran player. I don't think there's any downside there.
No, you're right. I mean, these are low risk, and we had the same conversation, even more so with the Svechnikov deal, just because of the age of him signing technically with the Moose right now, and we expect there'll be a 2-way deal signed at some point with the Winnipeg Jets. But for a guy like Brassard, incredibly motivated to try to stay in the league, to earn another contract, and I mean, he has done it before at a pretty high level. He has scored, so at 8.25 coming into the Philadelphia Flyers, it's, as I said, if it doesn't work out, it's very, very low risk. You put the guy in the minors, you put him on waivers, high upside it could be, and that would be a good thing for the player and, of course, the team. Shout out to Winnipeg's Carson Lambos. We had Carson and a former guest on Winnipeg Sports Talk right before the draft. Carson's got his ELC done with the Minnesota Wild, and really happy for Carson. I actually saw him at the Bomber game right after we had him on the show, Reem, and of course after he was drafted by the Wild. And I know many people around here were hoping that the Jets might tab him. We know things went a little bit, a little differently. They went with a forward because of the guys that were available at that point. But I will say this, after an injury, and I believe he had COVID, if I'm not mistaken, at some point last year. He'll be a guy that will be looking forward to presumably starring once again in the Western Hockey League with the Ice, and hopefully going to an NHL training camp, a rookie camp, and trying to make his way into professional hockey in the next couple of years. But always a big day for young men when they sign their first National Hockey League contract. Oh yeah, so you always remember, what are you going to do? What's the first thing you bought? It's always a fun question. Remember Adam Lowry said he bought like a KitchenAid mixer after that's right.
One of his contracts. Was he going to go out and buy a PS5 if he can find one? But yeah, congrats to Carson Lambos, former guest of the show, as you said. So that, I mean, pretty cool signing your first deal. I know a lot of people said the Jets should have taken Lambos, but I don't think they expected Chaz Lucius to follow them. But I think maybe that's a conversation we'll have going forward. But another Winnipegger signing his contract, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on him as the time goes on. Yeah, I mean, I would have been pumped to hear that Carson Lambos was coming to the Winnipeg Jets, but I have a pretty hard time second guessing the scouting staff of the Winnipeg Jets, considering the way they've hit with so many of their first round selections. So that's the fun thing about draft conversation. It can go for, I mean, in 2-3 years, you're having a conversation. And then in 10 years, you look back at the draft and redraft, and there's a lot of hits, but there's a ton of misses. And you just hope you're on the right side of it more often than not. And as far as first round picks go, the Winnipeg Jets certainly have had. Sorry, do you have something more on that? I was going to say, we're still talking about 10 years later, Scheifele versus Sean Couturier. Are we not still comparing those two guys? Let's do it. That's something that would be fun, as we've got a little bit more downtime. 2011 draft redraft. Yeah.
going forward.
Man,
Wouldn't that be something?
That's 10 years ago. That's a long time ago, man. Are those players still in the NHL?
Well, many of them are. Mark Scheifele certainly is,
Yeah.
although unfortunately he won't be in the opening night lineup because, of course, he's still got one more game to serve after the Jake Evans suspension from the playoffs. Tuukka Rask out for a while. It says that he only wants to play in Boston, Remis, and money will not be an issue. Doesn't care about it. Hey, he's been very well compensated for a long time. And that's got to be music to a general manager's ears when you hear a veteran player like that say they're willing to come back. That's all they want to do. And it's not about the money.
Is Tuukka Rask like that old where he's like at the point of his career that he's like, yeah, I want the Roger Clemens deal where I play half a season, I'll sign for, the minimum. He's 34. He's played 560 career games. He's basically played half a season the last couple of years. Been solid. He notably left the team in the bubble.
Yes.
Was that 2 years ago or was that might have been 2 years?
That was a year ago, August. That's like 13 months ago.
Yeah, sorry. Not the most recent season, but the season before. Okay, I'm getting my timelines mixed up here, but
it's all just one big COVID era.
Yeah,
for everybody.
yeah.
Don't worry about that.
But we'll see how it goes. I think that's a bonus for Bruins. They did sign Linus Ullmark to be their goalie, and I see a lot of people really high on his stats. The numbers he was able to put up in a terrible Buffalo team. Seems like he's going to be the guy going forward. But if you can bring Rask in as a ringer, us halfway through the season, or there's an injury, and you're like, hey, we'll pay you, the minimum.
League minimum. Come on in, Tuukka.
Yeah, come on in. So I guess he's earned it. He's played a while. Good for him.
Yeah, so I have always been a fan of Tuukka Rask. I think the NHL is better with him. And, of course, Henrik Lundqvist has officially hung it up and retired. So, a few of those great era Scandinavian goalies that have been such a big part of those very successful teams out on the East Coast, potentially both with new goaltenders. And, again, I've been reading a whole bunch of, more just tweets and, people making their comments on just how heartbroken they are about the passing of Jimmy Hayes. Nobody more so than his family and his brother Kevin Hayes, who, as you mentioned, penned a pretty emotional tribute and put it out on Instagram to his brother. So many people in the hockey world just absolutely reeling. Jimmy Hayes, wasn't a really accomplished NHL player, hadn't been in the league for a couple of years, but I got to tell you, from hearing from former teammates and friends of his, this was a guy that lit up a room when he walked in, and an incredibly popular teammate during his stops in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, I've seen a number of players, Patrick Kane tweeting, his favorite teammate. Kevin Hayes, former Jet, now with the Flyers, posting a very emotional tribute here. And I do agree, has the hockey world completely rocked and devastated by the passing of Jimmy Hayes, 31 years old, 2 young children. Very sad, and nicely written post here and some pictures by Kevin Hayes on his Instagram, KP Hayes 12.
All right. Now we are, do want to thank our friends at Canadian Club for their great sponsorship of Winnipeg Sports Talk. It's great to have the official spirit of the Bombers on board as the official spear here at Winnipeg Sports Talk. You love Canadian Club since 1858. And if you're at the game on Sunday, you'll be able to get, a CC and Ginger, CC and Coke at anywhere in and around the stadium, along with their other products, Sauza Tequila, maybe some of the Northern Keep vodka, and of course, everybody making a pop by the Rum Hut, the Brugal Rum Hut, where you can get some Brugal rum or the good stuff, of course, Canadian Club. Make sure you're with us on Friday. We'll have another CC giveaway heading into a Bomber home game on Sunday at IG Field. We have to thank our friends at Royal Sports, especially this week with their little collab with us on the hats that we dropped a couple days ago. The response has been tremendous. We still do have, I think, 4 snapbacks there and a few more of each available on the Winnipeg Sports Talk store. But if you're popping down to Royal to grab one of the Winnipeg Sports Talk hats, you'll want to make sure to give yourself a little bit of time for a good lap around the biggest and best sports store, in my opinion, on the planet. You'll be getting ready for hockey season. We've got soccer, baseball, football, so much of the traditional sports we think of, and then cool things like disc golf, bikes, a camping section, and certainly with kids getting ready to go back to school, You're going to want to get onto the King Skate Snow and Surf side for some of the coolest clothes around as well. Skateboards, shoes, they've got it all. Royal Sports, 650 Rally and EK, and 750 Pembina Highway, where the Winnipeg Sports Talk hats are, and there still are 4 snapbacks there. Big thanks to Royal for their support of us for a long, long time. And of course, we saw Nick in the chat today. Big shout out to Nick and Nikki and the Nick and Nikki DQ group for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. 4 locations in Winnipeg and Southern Manitoba, including the DQ in Niverville, DQ Northgate, both with drive-thrus, the DQ Polo Park, and the DQ St. Anne's. Whether you're in the mood for a peanut butter parfait, a blizzard, or maybe just a heck of an awesome hamburger or some chicken fingers, they've got it all for you at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. Great sponsors of ours since day one here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And if you are having an event or needing a cake, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. You can get it ordered over and have it ready for you to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQ locations. All right, Andy McNamara is coming up a little later on. Andy's one of my favorite dudes to talk to. We'll get into NFL, his Browns, my Chiefs, the upcoming season, and of course, some fantasy football topics. But first up, let's talk to Farhan Lalji. I got a chance to talk to Farhan just before the program today to get the latest on what's happening with the Elks outbreak and the news around the Canadian Football League as the CFL struggles with COVID positive tests and unvaccinated players. Here's Farhan. Great to have you on Winnipeg Sports Talk. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Huss. It's been too long since we talked.
No doubt. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And man, there's a lot to get to in the Canadian Football League. If you could, for us, take us back to the weekend when you found, when you first heard about this potential outbreak with the Edmonton Elks and how this story's developed over the last few days.
Well, honestly, there had been some rumors that there had been more cases, and then the second that the league or the team put out a release saying they were canceling practice, I knew this thing had gotten big, right? I mean, because if you know football coaches, they don't just cancel practice. That doesn't happen in season just because. They're creatures of habit. They're desperate for preparation time. So you knew there was more to the story than met the eye. And then, as I quickly kind of dug in on it, I'd heard the numbers and that, the league and medical staff and people were referring to this thing as an outbreak. And then it just kind of evolved from there, right? And then, I started hearing about the possibility that the game would be postponed, and that one I had a difficult time with just because of the policy that everybody else was quoting, saying, hey, wait a minute, I thought if there was 36 players they could play. But, ultimately we were able to determine that it was in fact going to happen, and we were able to report it. But it's amazing just kind of how this has evolved and just how fluid things have become, because even within that policy, it still says government has the right to, trump everything. And it's not like the government made this decision for the league, but it was certainly done in conjunction with them. And the fact that more cases were coming and there were some breakthrough cases, they really had to determine what they were dealing with. And in order to do that, they needed to pump the brakes and go through a testing procedure and wait a couple of days to see what came of it. And as we've seen, cases have still increased.
Well, they have increased. I believe 11 is the number right now. And Farhan, I mean, from what we're hearing, I guess everything is pretty much shut down in Edmonton right now when it comes to the Canadian Football League team. I mean, what are the Elks players doing right now? What are the coaches doing? And at what point can they get back to business? Or is there a threshold they need to get to first?
Well, everything right now is virtual preparation. So right now they're doing things on video and they're having meetings and they're communicating digitally, and nothing is happening in person. As you mentioned, the facility's closed, and they're going to need some consecutive days of no positive cases. I know they were trending in a better place yesterday. I'm not sure if the additional 2 that Randy Ambrosi referenced in his interview with Dave Naylor to get us to 11 was from yesterday's results or the day before's later results. I'm not positive of that. I do know that there were some positive trends for the team in their testing yesterday, but the team has said that every 48 hours they're going to offer an update. So at some point today, we're going to get an update as to what their numbers look like after the last 2 days of testing. So they're going to need some consecutive days, like at least 2 in a row. It might require more than that before they're allowed to reopen the facility, right? So they were hoping to go 7 days, then reopen it, and then address the Calgary game, right? Because you've got the Battle of Alberta and the Labor Day games coming up, right? So you don't want to get into a situation where a second day, affects things here.
No doubt about it. Now, Farhan...
a second game, I should say.
Exactly. Now, the game that was supposed to be kicking off this week in the Canadian Football League on Thursday is the game that has been, currently it's referred to as postponed. Where are things at with that game, and how problematic is it going to be to try to get that game played this year?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge because it might require more than one game change in order to accommodate it, right? I mean, there seemed to be a window like in the August 30th, 31st range where it might have been able to just kind of get plopped in before the Labor Day game, just because there's some Monday games and it might have opened up some additional days. But I don't think, I know they're not going to go in that direction. So now we're looking at late October, potentially early November for when the game could get rescheduled. And I know both teams have buys in October. And then, like I said, could you work something out around there so that, rather than a 10-day break in between games, you've got a 5-day and you've got a game inserted there. But again, because the two teams don't have bye weeks at the same time, it becomes a challenge for both of those teams to kind of get that done, because, you could be putting the wrong team in a real squeeze in terms of how close their games are, right? And you don't want that to be Toronto, because they had nothing to do with this. So I'm hearing later in October, potentially as late as November, for this thing to go. And the league's going to do everything they can to find time to make this happen so that everybody can get paid. Hopefully within the next couple of days, we can get some clarity on when that game is. But I can tell you this, those two teams aren't getting paid right now. They're going to get paid when the game gets played. So neither of those teams has been paid for this week's game. And the expectation is that if the game gets rescheduled, then they'd get an additional paycheck at that point.
Farhan Lalji of TSN joining us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Farhan, what do we know about the vaccination rates of both the Elks and the Argonauts? Are either team at 85%, and how might that affect things going forward when it comes to the games? And as you mentioned, players getting paid potentially if a game is not played.
Yeah, neither one of them was at 85% going into that week, so neither team gets paid, right, at this point. And then, it just comes down to which rate you want to look at, right? And I think the league is trying to go to a single vax in their regulations, at least for now, to encourage more teams to get to that 85% threshold, right? So, they want to make sure that they get even a single vaccination in a lot of them, right? And like I said, as of when this game was to have been played, neither of the teams was at that threshold yet. The Elks, I think Chris Presson, at his availability, said that there were two teams that were still below them, so that would have put them 7th out of 9 in terms of vaccination rates. And the Argos are kind of somewhere in the middle as well. So both teams have a ways to go. And look, this is the big problem for the league right now, right? I mean, I've gone on record as saying, in my opinion, the game should be forfeited. And again, it's just that. It's an opinion. That's not speculative reporting. That's not saying things are trending in that direction. That is just Farhan Lalji's opinion, that somebody needs to send a message to every player in the Canadian Football League. This is not a indictment of the Elks or the Argos, or saying that these two teams or one of them dropped the ball. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is vaccination rates in this league are low. Presidents, GMs, teams are frustrated. It's ridiculous to me that you're getting into a situation where probably all 9 teams are going to have fully vaccination mandates for their fans, yet players can not be vaccinated. You're getting industries across the country that are demanding vaccinations, and the Canadian Football League can't. And look, I know that some of the players that have tested positive here have been vaccinated. I know that it breaks through, but we also understand that everybody who does get vaccinated is at less risk of A, catching it, B, giving it, even though they can, but C, also what their symptoms are like when they get it. So I think we have to be at the point where we can demand this of players. And I think that if the league can't demand it, having a forfeiture forces players to really take a look at this situation and take this a little more seriously than they have been.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I mean, the threat of losing a paycheck is something that, forces people to do some things that they might not, naturally go and do, but it's something that I think the league certainly needs right now. I have to ask, I mean, you're incredibly well connected, talking with people throughout the league on a daily basis. How is this resonating throughout the league outside of Edmonton and Toronto?
Well, I think there's a bit of both, right? I think some people want to point the finger at Edmonton and say that they've got the moral high ground and they're doing things right because they haven't had a lot of positive cases. I think in some cases that approach is naive, but I also think that other people are worried. They're nervous because they know what's happening in their locker room, right? And they know that maybe, it's not where it needs to be. It's not just from a vaccination rate standpoint, but from an overall approach standpoint, right? That is every player following what they're being asked to do if they're not vaccinated, right? And even if they are, for that matter, but if they're not, and they see their teammates running around doing things, and they know the team doesn't have the capacity to monitor and investigate, and in some cases discipline, right? I think there's coaches worried. They really are, and they just know that there's not a lot they can do about it. So there's every level of emotion right now, from concern to frustration. It's all there on the table right now, and this is what people had feared, because, when the league decided to go to government and say, look, we'd like to get a loosening of restrictions, reflective of the rest of society, there were two schools of thought, because there were some teams that were afraid of the loosening of restrictions, because then players would really go out and do whatever they wanted. And while you wanted to make things comfortable, you still wanted them to take things seriously, right? So I think there were two schools of thought, and I'm not saying this is a result of the loosening of restrictions, but it certainly can't help, because when a family gets it, you don't necessarily deem it an outbreak when it's not involving football players, but when 5 football players get it, it's clearly an outbreak, right?
No, absolutely. And I mean, I can imagine that every front office right now has already been dealing with this, but is looking long and hard about their situation and seeing anything they can do to improve it. Now, on top of all this, Naylor spoke with Randy Ambrosie yesterday, Farhan, and I mean, the understanding is that when this federal travel ban comes into effect, that CFL charters would also be part of that. How might that affect the rest of the CFL season?
Well, I think that's something they got to deal with right now, because if you're the CFL, do you want to ask for an exemption, right? And I don't think they'd get one based on what we've heard to this point. And, forget the CFL, who generally takes charters? Rich people who kind of play by their own set of rules from time to time. And, they want to go to a place and they want to have a vacation. They want to go to a party or, what have you, right? It's you probably don't want to get into that scenario where you're granting exemptions for that. The optics of that as a government are bad, right? And, what happens if you're the NHL versus the CFL? The CFL probably thinks right now, good. We're going to force players to get vaccinated, or can we enact a policy that says, okay, if you can't travel to games, you're not getting paid that week. That'd be the first thing I would want to do if I was the league office or even at a presidential level. If you're not getting vaccinated, we have to fill the charter with players that are getting vaccinated. So we're still going to pay 45 players. We're just going to have to take some guys off the practice roster and off the CFL COVID roster, the 5-person roster that have been vaccinated. We're going to put them on our roster, and we've got to pay them. So we're not going to pay you. And if that is allowed to go through, I think the league right now is, I think they would like everybody available to help them here, right? Create the policy for us. If it's fan vaccination or things like that, I know in British Columbia, for example, EC Pavco a few days put out a statement saying that, among other things, at the end of the statement, it said teams have the ability to go above and enact their own rules. Well, the teams don't want to do that. They want the government to do that. So eventually, the provincial government has now made the decision here to do that. And I think by extension, I think the league, if they could get somebody above them, government, to make some of these decisions, it certainly washes the league of having to do it. More importantly, having the PA push back, right? Because the PA can push back on the league. They can't push back on government. So I think if you're the league, I would say, yeah, bravo. We're not going to file for an exemption. Sure, we're going to create our policies to make sure other people are getting paid and the people that aren't vaccinated aren't getting paid at that point, and apply more indirect pressure on these players to get it done.
Farhan, on a more positive note for the Canadian Football League, and certainly the team you cover most closely, the British Columbia Lions, we've got a new owner announced last week. How big of a shot in the arm is this for the CFL's westernmost franchise?
I think it's a shot in the arm for the entire league, because when you can get a guy like Amar Doman, who's got that level of wealth, connections, credibility, local, all of those types of things, he checks every box. He's willing to commit to the infrastructure. He's a recognized builder, young, dynamic, innovative, all of those things. So, for the Lions, it's great that they've got a guy who can finally do all of that. I mean, David Braley, God rest his soul, and God bless him that he saved the franchise and paid all the bills, and that he hired Bob Ackles, who turned it around. But, the one thing David Braley wasn't doing since Bob Ackles' passing is he wasn't necessarily spending money on marketing in a lot of the areas where they needed to grow in. And, because he was just he didn't think in those terms, right? So they needed somebody who could think in those terms, and they've now got that. But look at the person and how this sale got turned around, because you could see yourself in places like Calgary, and maybe Montreal, again, and who knows in Toronto, needing new ownership. And the way the sale got transacted here, look, the Lions were really up for sale for 10 months. It's been talked about for 7 or 8 years, but as long as Mr. Braley was alive, it wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to part with the team. So now he passes. Then they go through an estate process. And then it really wasn't until the season got announced that the Lions began actively soliciting bids to buy the team. From the time they did that, it was sold in 9 weeks. So it was handled in the most professional, credible way possible. And that's a signal to the rest of the league and other owners, other potential owners and other potential teams that need ownership, that this is how it should be done and this is how it can be done. And if that happens in the next time that a sale needs to occur, that's a great thing for the league. And now the blueprint's been set.
Hey, Farhan, before we go, I know you're paying close attention to 4-down football. NFL camp's going on. What's the word out of Seattle for the Seahawks going into week 1?
Well, look, they're not playing Russell Wilson for the first 2 preseason games, or haven't yet. He is supposed to get a little bit of run along with the starters in the next game. But, you've got a new offensive coordinator, and we'll see if this is the route to go, right? I mean, last year you saw what happened with that team. They were so explosive and dynamic for the first half of the season, and for the second half, they simply couldn't function offensively. And whether that was a result of, Russell Wilson, the offensive line, or the offensive scheme, probably somewhere in between. So is it fixed at this point? I still think they've got O-line concerns. They've got to get Dwayne Brown done and signed and in the building. And I think there's some receiver concerns, because outside of the first 2 receivers, there's nothing there after that. So they need some additional targets. I know they got Everett from the Rams in the offseason, but in terms of a wide receiver type guy that can do some things, they've got to get better there. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's optimism. There always is at this time of year for every team. But I want to see what Russell Wilson looks like in Shane Waldron's offense.
Farhan, great stuff. Hey, just on the way out, tell us about the podcast you're doing with the Moj. A lot of people here are really getting into a lot of the content, and first, you guys do such a great job covering both leagues.
Well, and I'm glad you guys are on in the digital space. I think that's fantastic out there in Winnipeg. But yeah, Bob Marjanovic, the Lions play-by-play guy, myself, are doing a podcast through Hubcast Media every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And it's an NFL-driven podcast. There is a CFL component to it, but yeah, we're going to get into all topics around the NFL, including, like I said, the CFL and college football as well. There'll be a heavy gaming component. So if you're into fantasy, if you're into prop betting, single game betting, all of that, you can get information through us. TSN's going to be involved with it as well. We're going to have national guests from around the NFL. So 1 hour action-packed. It's been an audio-only podcast during our soft launch in August, but once we get to September and the NFL season kicks off, we're going to be doing it full video, and in fact, I'll be doing the first one from Tampa. Moj will be in Vancouver. I'll be in Tampa for the NFL opener, and we'll kick it off that way.
Well, looking forward to it, Farhan. Thanks so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are. We appreciate it. You be well, my friend, and let's do it again soon.
All right, Huss. Thanks for having me. We'll talk soon.
All right, great stuff from Farhan. We thank him for the time. And we caught up with Farhan just before we went on the air today, in between some conference calls in the lock shop. Always great to have Farhan on. And Remo, of course, when we're talking with Farhan about everything that he's reporting on, we get to some of those topics that unfortunately are very prevalent right now. And did anyone have to go over the top rope there in the chat, or was it pretty good?
Ryan Friesen thought he was pretty funny in chat, telling me, saying that Remis sucks. Everyone say it in 3, 2, 1. But no, I don't know. God, it was okay in there. But I mean, these are the conversations that we're going to be having going forward, especially as we get into the NHL season, NFL, especially for fantasy purposes. I know we're talking with Andy. I mean, are you taking Cole Beasley on your team? Players who are openly not getting
take all anti-vax team. Cousins, Thielen, Cole Beasley, DeAndre Hopkins. That actually wouldn't be a bad squad, to be honest with you. Just see whether they're able to go.
Exactly. I think your risk of them having to sit out games, especially in NFL, where it's 16-game season. Or sorry, isn't it 8? Didn't they up it?
17 now.
17 now. Sorry, I think is high. So something I think we're gonna have to all consider in sports, and just everything else that's going on. So some great conversation there far. And so no resolution right now on that game if it's postponed or if it's a forfeit. That's what we can take away from that.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it is postponed right now, and as I said yesterday, when we were talking about this with DT, if the Argos were over the 85% threshold when that game was to be played, I think it's a different situation. I think they're, hey, listen, you guys couldn't show up and you guys couldn't play the game. That's not on us. You lose and you guys don't get paid. We do. They're not in that situation. So I think that they'll look to find a way to play the game. What that means for the league, whether other teams have to move around. I can tell you if I'm the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and I'm getting my team up to the threshold, I don't want one of my scheduled games moved just to accommodate a team that didn't get there and had this. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And then, of course, you've got the issues with the charter flights going in when this travel ban comes on. And that is a whole nother nightmare for teams that don't have full buy-in from their squads. We're going to get to Andy McNamara in just a second. Got to give a shout out to our friends at Paramount Services Limited for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Paramount Services Limited is a full facility maintenance company serving commercial HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handyman services to all of your favorite convenience stores and restaurants in Western Canada, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and they've been doing it for over 28 years. If you are looking for a one-stop shop for kitchen, cooler supplies for your business or property in Western Canada, give them a call and ask for Carrie O'Brien or visit their website at Paramount Services Limited for more information. And of course, they're always looking for qualified techs who specialize in HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handiwork. If you know of somebody that might be a great fit, tell them to head over to the Paramount Services Ltd.com website, throw a resume in, and they, of course, are a member of the local Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union. Lots of excitement at Knott AutoCorp these days. They are getting ready to officially open the car lab. And Trevor Knott is a very unique dude, a good friend of the program, and also an ultimate Winnipeg guy. He, I think, bought the sign off the old Winnipeg Convention Center, and it is going up in the new Winnipeg Car Lab. I saw the W going up on the side of the building. I'm like, only Trevor Knott would think about that. But anyway, it's a great addition out to the Knott AutoCorp showroom and compound out at Waverly and McGillivray. If you're thinking about a new ride for you and your family, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? You can see them at Waverly and McGillivray or find out more with what's in stock or contact them with what you're looking for at knott.ca. And summer is here. We haven't had great patio weather, although it's a little sunny outside right now. Maybe a bit better tonight to head over to your local Boston Pizza. And when you're there, whether you're inside the restaurant, the bar, or out on the patio, the new Summer's Here menu is in effect right now, including the Burger Italiano, the Honey Dill Fried Chicken Sandwich, and some great summer cocktails featuring the Peachy Mojito Royale, the White Sangria Smash, the Galaxy Fishbowl, and the Bulldog Margarita Fishbowl. Pop by Boston Pizza. Summer's here. Bring your appetite. Sunglasses optional. All right, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of NFL training camp and the preseason. And it has been far too long since we've had our next guest join us. But he's been a very busy man himself. Our good friend, the one, the only, Andy McNamara. Of course, you know him from Sportsnet and all the great work he does covering fantasy sports over at Rogers. What's up, Andy Mac? How are you?
Oh, Hustler, you're right. Been way too long, my friend. Hope you guys are all doing well and all the viewers. Miss being on with you guys, but the fact that I am means that we're getting real close to real football. I can't wait. Wait. We're so close.
Now, we had your buddy Jamie Thomas on yesterday, and of course we talked for 15 minutes or so about the Jets, and then we couldn't help but get into fantasy. This league that you guys are involved in is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And Dustin Nielsen, who I just finished the lock shop, is going to be here in Winnipeg. We're going to get together on Friday, but he's also going to be involved in a rookie auction where he's got, well, I don't even want to say the amount of money to bid on these players as a GM in this league. But tell us about it, and what was it like being out in Regina when you guys got everything going with the 53-round draft on the weekend? I still can't wrap my head around that.
I'm still recovering, Hustler. Let me tell you, I'm still recovering. That's a grind, but that's why we call it Ultimate. I got the hat right there, the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League. So it was great. Haven't been out to Regina in a few years, so great to be back out there. And really, to have Dusty involved making picks and all that was really cool. And this is where we have the ownership. The first overall pick went to the ownership group of Hall of Famer Chris Carter, Michael Vick, boxing champ Terrence Bud Crawford, and then you had Nick Lewis, who had the third overall pick. The second overall pick, when I was down in Vegas for this franchise auction we were chatting about back in July, the casino owner literally stopped me at the stadium swim at Circa. Was like, Andy, I was reading up on what you guys are doing. Can you help me buy a team? So I'm in my swimsuit, and I'm like in the casino owner's office. I'm talking to billionaires. It's crazy. So the draft was great. And yeah, the rookie auction, because that was just the veteran draft. So now it's the rookie auction where you got to pay up for each of the first 64 picks. Each pick goes up for auction. You bid, you win it, you pick your player. So I'm fascinated to see how that's going to go down on Friday.
Who went first off the board?
Patrick Mahomes.
Nice.
Patty Mahomes. Yeah,
that's a first pick well spent to the guys that
I thought you'd like that.
there. I will say that I endorse that selection. When did the thing that I'm still wondering, and I'm sure some people are as well, is how it's going to work with O-linemen and defensive linemen and special teamers. I mean, where did those guys go in the draft? Was it basically the usual fantasy, like all the offensive players going, and then the deep later rounds were filled with long snappers and punters?
Well, I think the first defensive player went off late in the second round. It was Chase Young, because remember in our league in UFAFL, you also have to deal with the real life salary cap. So that's why he went over someone like, let's say, a Myles Garrett who's already been paid. Chase Young, you can still get on your rookie deal. So that's just another layer to have to think about what to do in this Ultimate Fantasy American Football League. So yeah, you had mainly quarterbacks dominated the first round, because and you have to sort of unhinge yourself from the traditional fantasy think. In your 12-man redraft, you take first quarterback goes off fourth round and all that. Here, there's 32 teams. So if you don't get your quarterback right away, you're going to be living with some backup who's not going to touch the field, and that's on you. So that was the different mindset that people started going on. But yeah, the offensive linemen each have value based on the team's rushing yards minus like sacks allowed, defensive linemen for tackles. And yeah, it's that balance of who's on the rookie deal, who's expensive. And then one other side of this thing, Hustler, that's really cool. We're going to be launching our Legends League, NFL Legends League, on Pro Bowl weekend in February. We're going to auction off those in October. I'll tell you more about that another time. But when players retire from the UFAFL, you sell their fantasy player contract to the Legends League. So we had Tom Brady go 4th overall. And the guy said it was because, well, heck, I can use him now, and then I'm going to sell him to a Legends League team and make some revenue that way. So that's just another angle to it.
Well, how does a Legends League work if all the guys are retired? How do you get points?
Well, and this, as we get closer and things finalize, I am like bursting at the seams to share this with you, because it's going to be freaking amazing. It's a simulation. It's in-depth. It's formulas and algorithms far beyond my mental capacity. So we have actual smart people working on that. But it's going to be, like, Hustler, we're going to have it so that video game style, you're going to be watching the simulation of these stars. And then because we have the real life players signed up with us, you're going to have guys like, well, Eric Metcalf doing commentary on Eric Metcalf, watching Eric Metcalf playing the game.
I'm here for this. Hey, I was a guy that was literally betting on Madden simulations at the beginning of the pandemic because there's nothing else to do. So I'm in. Andy McNamara is with us. Andy, let's get to what's going on south of the border. I guess the first real fantasy relevant news today was a trade between the Patriots and the Rams. The Cam Akers injury was a huge setback for the Rams, who certainly have title aspirations after the Matt Stafford deal. And Sony Michel, who's been a relative disappointment from where I'm at in New England, but has any running back ever really succeeded in New England? Not much. He's going to the Rams. How much does this jack up his fantasy value right now? And what do you make of the deal for both sides?
Well, going in, I just felt, as soon as Cam Akers went down, I don't know about you, Hustler, I just felt I couldn't back it up with any sort of stat or number or whatever. But in my gut, I thought there's no way the Rams go into the season with Darrell Henderson as their lead back. There's just isn't, because in limited time that he's had an opportunity, he's been okay. He hasn't seized the role. If the Rams were confident in him fully, they would not have drafted Cam Akers. So behind Henderson, even just from an injury standpoint, you had a guy, Xavier Jones, who's never taken an NFL snap. You have Jake Funk behind him, who I want him to succeed, Hustler, because I think we can make some fun merchandise, right? Do the old Terry Funk, have the Funk U University shirts and stuff. That's a whole different story. But behind that, where are you going? So it made sense that I knew they were going to add somebody. What it really does, I feel, fantasy-wise, is it creates another committee. Because at the very worst, Henderson was going to get the bulk of the carry. So now you're splitting. And if your draft is coming up, can you count on Sony Michel or Henderson individually? You can't. And so to me, that really just creates another committee scenario where at best, you're looking at a lower-end RB2 situation, I think, from Sony Michel. But I would at least think if you traded for him, he's at least going to be getting a chance. And that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe some goal line work for the Rams when they get in close. The other injury that was incredibly fantasy relevant is a player that's yet to play in the NFL, and that's Travis Etienne, who was a high pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars, was going to be playing with his Clemson teammate Trevor Lawrence in Urban Meyer's offense. It decimated James Robinson's value in most leagues. Now, if you got James Robinson sort of late, you got a big smile on your face, unfortunately at the expense of Etienne. Let's talk about the Jacksonville backfield and maybe just your thoughts on the Jags overall. 1-15, but a lot of people think that at least offensively, once Trevor Lawrence gets his feet wet in the National Football League, that there's some points to be had from that unit.
Yeah, and coming out of this draft, Najee Harris and Travis Etienne were sort of the 1A, 1B type as far as pure talent. But he went to Jacksonville. Like you said, that destroyed James Robinson's value, but also limited what Travis Etienne could do, similar to any type of committee. If you have two guys, how are they going to be used? It was unknown. And while you obviously don't want anything to happen to any player injury-wise, from a pure fantasy, numbers standpoint, boy, this puts James Robinson right back as the lead dog, and you elevate him from a maybe a back-end RB2, probably more of a flex type or bench stash to an RB1. Like, you have to put James Robinson right in the RB1 category right now because of that injury. And overall, I think offensively, they're going to be playing down a bunch, I believe. The defense got a bit better, but not great still. So you have value in Laviska Shenault. What is he going to be like? I believe the dark horse sleeper, and I put this in my Sportsnet articles, Hustler, is Marvin Jones. He was a WR 18 last year in half PPR. Marvin Jones of the Lions with that god-awful coach Matt Patricia. So now you put Marvin Jones, and in training camp, this is what I was hoping would happen, and it is happening. Rookie quarterbacks often look to that veteran, that safety blanket. Who do I know I can get the ball to, and he's going to take care of me? Marvin Jones is that guy. They've been developing that relationship. So I believe you can get Marvin Jones later in drafts, and you can slide him in as a set-and-forget WR3 with WR2 upside on your roster. I love that as a late value pickup on any fantasy draft, Marvin Jones.
Well, and of course, we know that the garbage time points counts just the same as they do in the first quarter. And I have a feeling after watching the Jags early in the preseason that at least early on, there might be a lot of garbage time for Trevor Lawrence to rack up some points and some yards without maybe the pressure that one would normally get in the second half of NFL games. Teddy Bridgewater announced as the starter in Denver. We can take this from a fantasy perspective, I guess, but let's talk as well just about the Broncos and their position in that division. You've got the Chiefs at the top. You've got a Chargers team that many people are high on, including myself, if they don't have a bunch of devastating injuries in the preseason like they seem to have each and every year. And then you've got the Raiders and Broncos. And I'm out on Drew Lock. I thought that, we sort of knew what Drew Lock was, and it sounds like Vic Fangio sort of realized that. What do you make of Teddy getting the job in Denver, and what does this do to a guy's value like a Jerry Jeudy?
Personally, I was hoping for this outcome from pure fantasy, because we've seen with Teddy Bridgewater, while not being a starting caliber fantasy quarterback himself, has proven that he's able to do enough to elevate those around him. Did it in Carolina. Some nice weapons in Carolina. And he did it with Christian McCaffrey going down. So Teddy Bridgewater can distribute the football. We've seen that. So I think that is a much safer floor, probably a lower ceiling overall than Drew Lock talent-wise. I think Drew Lock, if Drew Lock had the best day of his career, I think is more talented than Teddy Bridgewater. The problem is he hasn't been on the field enough to prove that, and I don't think he's going to get there. So fantasy-wise, this is great news for anybody who has stock in Broncos players for their fantasy team. I think it just elevates everybody, Hustler, because of, again, what we saw him do with DJ Moore, with Robbie Anderson last year, throwing it out to Mike Davis. What's that going to mean to a Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams combo in that backfield? Tight end. Now, he didn't use the tight end very much in Carolina. Does Noah Fant get worked in more? Or do we see that trend continue? I'm not big on Noah Fant to begin with anyway. I think he's been overhyped, and I'm not too interested. But the rest, Jerry Jeudy, Sutton, Hamler, right? Tim Patrick, who came on last year. How do all those guys fit in? I just believe in general, you can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief if you're a Broncos fantasy owner of any of those types of weapons with Teddy Bridgewater under center.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think if you're just a Broncos fan, you got to be happy about this decision too, because I think everyone would agree, especially the Bronco fans that I've talked to, that this sort of a decision was inevitable. Many of them wanted to get Aaron Rodgers, or make some sort of another move. But to have a competent, capable quarterback like Bridgewater coming in, I think certainly makes the Broncos a more dangerous team coming out of the gate, because I do like a lot of what they have on the defensive side of the football. Quickly, what do you make of the backfield situation in Denver?
I think if you're looking at that, Javonte Williams, don't shy away. Because in a shared role in North Carolina with Michael Carter, who I also love him going to the Jets in that San Francisco-style offense that Robert Salah is bringing over with him from the 49ers to New York, he paired up with Michael Carter. Javonte Williams did. They both rushed for over 1,000 yards, Hustler, at North Carolina last year. Now, Carter's the better pass catcher. Williams is the better rusher. So what I feel is going to happen is Melvin Gordon, who this is going to be his last year, I think, probably in Denver, just veteran status. Halfway through the year, we're going to see Javonte Williams take over. We're going to see him eased in. So dynasty-wise, keeper-wise, Javonte Williams, you want a lot of shares of. Redraft-wise, you're probably going to be able to get Williams a little bit later, and you're just going to have to hope he gets a chance sooner rather than later. But I think Williams is the guy to go with right away. And maybe, Hustler, maybe the strategy is if you get Melvin Gordon in a redraft, first quarter of the season, let's say he's hopping through weeks 2, 3, 4, try to sell high. Use that as a sell high opportunity in a trade.
Yeah, at any point, if you can sell high on Melvin Gordon, do it, because there's a fumble right around the corner or an injury, and we all know how that is. Winnipeg Walters in the chat says, "Go Bengals." How's Joe Burrow been looking, and where are we at right now? And listen, I know you're a Browns guy.
I got Burrow.
Oh,
Burrow right there.
There we go.
I got Joey.
Are they going to be able to protect him? I mean, is he going to survive a second season? I'm not a Bengals fan, but I'm a fan of Joe Burrow, and I was really looking forward to maybe this team becoming relevant again. And, they've got T. Higgins, they get Jamar Chase. Many people thought they should have taken Penny Sewell to protect Joe Burrow. But, both from a team and fantasy perspective, where are you at on Cincinnati?
If I'm looking at this objectively, Hustler, look, I think the league is more fun when there's a lot of great quarterbacks. The league's more fun that way, right? Joe Burrow can throw up 300 to 400 yards without thinking twice. Now, word has been out of camp, he's still kind of favoring that knee. He's not really comfortable. And you get Penny Sewell, or you don't get Penny Sewell in the draft, which I was screaming at the TV that you should have, like you said. Like, Jamar Chase is a great wide receiver. Tremendous. The best one for me out of this draft. But the Bengals didn't need that. You needed protection, not just for the quarterback, but how would it help out your running game? Zach Taylor's the head coach from a overly aggressive, super pass-happy offense. Just ridiculous. I think Zach Taylor's probably going to be fired after this year. It's not a good setup on offense. It's clearly a pass. Now you have your quarterback who's still hurting. I hope Joe Burrow gets better because he is a heck of a talent. I just don't feel comfortable doing that if I'm drafting for fantasy, because, Hustler, you look at it, well, he's one hit away, and then I'll leave the homework to the viewers. Look at the depth chart of the Bengals. Okay, a quarterback. What happens if poor Joe Burrow goes down? You're wiped out.
They pick in
You're
the top
wiped out.
5 again. They might do that anyways. But
They might do that anyway. You're totally wiped out. You're wiped out. The weapons are great. I just can't have confidence that Joe Burrow is going to be on the football field for a full 17 games.
I hope that he is.
Me too.
But I don't think anyone's expecting the Bengals to contend for that AFC North title. No. You got the Steelers, who are in a bit of transition. You got the Ravens, that are still a very good team. And then there are your Browns.
Let's go.
It must be a strange feeling to go into the season. Like, the Browns fans always have tons of optimism, but it's never, ever grounded in reality.
No.
I would say
Very
that
fair.
this year that it is. And to be honest, it starts with that offensive line. It starts with a pretty good defense. What's been the camp reports from the Brownies, and how are you feeling going in as far as their spot in that AFC North?
Yeah, you're right, Hustler. It's very strange. I feel like the Ricky Bobby thing, right? I don't know what to do with my hands. The Browns are good. What? I don't know what to do. It's weird. But they're set up because, listen, this is Baker Mayfield, believe it or not, his first time in this league where he has returned with the same offensive coordinator and head coach in his whole career. That's ridiculous turnover.
That's not surprising considering where he's been playing.
It's not. That's the thing. That's why you've had so much quarterback turnover. However, you look at the last half of the season from week 9 onward, Baker Mayfield threw 2 interceptions, right? He's in that quarterback-friendly offense of Kevin Stefanski with the run-first offense behind, like you said, that great offensive line. So I think the offense is intact. The defense was the part where the Browns spent a ton of money in free agency and draft capital. Word out of camp, Greg Newsome, the rookie, is going to win that second cornerback job opposite Denzel Ward. He's looking dynamite. Jeremiah Owusu, J.O.K. I can't even say his last name properly yet, but J.O.K., the linebacker out of Notre Dame, who fell to the second round, is a fire plug. He is just all over the place. He's a spark plug of energy. You have him, Johnson in at safety. There's some injuries. They're banged up on the safety and in the backfield, but you also bring in Jadeveon Clowney, and we've been saying the what if all his career pretty much, Hustler, but he's never had help. You have an elite pass rusher like Myles Garrett. So if he stays on the field with Clowney, that upside to get at the quarterback is tantalizing. So I think they're in good shape. You know, as we know, Browns fans have been wrong many a time before, but hopefully all the suffering will pay off and it will be a good year.
Great to have everybody in the chat. If you haven't already, please do us a favor, hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. If you have any other thoughts or fantasy questions you want us to get to Andy, you can fire those in. And Ryan Friesen is poking me right now. Oh. One thing is a guarantee. Kermit the Frog, how dare you besmirch the great Patrick Mahomes like that, Ryan? And the Chiefs won't make it to the AFC Championship game this year. Ryan, oof. I am available for wagers if you would like to take that guarantee offline, if you know what I'm saying. They are still the team to beat, Andy. I think the Browns, we'll see. I mean, by the way, we're already in week 1 mode, and you know what comes in week 1? It's the Browns and Chiefs. I cannot wait for that game.
Boy.
But when you look at the landscape of the AFC, let's get away from fantasy for a minute. Who are the teams that, you believe are the contenders along with the Chiefs in the AFC? And is there a team that no one's talking about, that team that always sucks, that makes the huge, turnaround the year before? Is there a big turnaround team in the AFC that you think we'll be talking about in the second half of the season as being a legitimate push for the playoffs?
I still think that, first of all, the Chiefs are the team to beat until they're not. Like, they are the cream of the crop. They're the top. They are the trendsetter. That is what you have to go with. And that is what teams are building around. That's also why the Browns made several moves on defense in free agency and in the draft. You build towards, smart teams build towards who you have to beat. You got to beat the Chiefs. You got to beat the Chiefs. So right in that same tier, you look at the Buffalo Bills have got to be considered, obviously. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, my goodness. Just a heck of a talent there. You have the Tennessee Titans, who I think with the retooling, I'm interested to see how they do with adding Julio Jones. I think that adds a whole bunch of different layers because it'll free up A.J. Brown. It'll force people to not stack the box as much against Derrick Henry because you have to account for Julio. It's a better comfort level for Julio Jones at this point in his career as a WR2. So you look at him. I personally feel the Ravens are going to take a step back. I think the Steelers will as well with the 4 new offensive linemen. But if you look at it, I think it really comes down to the Bills, the Browns, the Chiefs, the Titans, and then it's as far as the team who really jumps up. Like no one really steps out to me, Hustlers, being a surprise. Like maybe if you consider the Chargers taking a step and really being a wild card team, maybe if that's, I wouldn't say they stunk last year at all, but maybe that would be the team that I could see taking a step to really get into that wild card conversation.
Well, let me ask you about the AFC East. I mean, you talked about the Bills. I think we realize the Jets are going to be a work in progress with a rookie quarterback and a new head coach, but who's a bigger threat to the Bills? Is it the new look Patriots with all the money they spent in free agency? Or is it the Miami Dolphins, a team that, for my money, on offense and defense is pretty stacked, but there's still a big question as to the quarterback position and whether Tua can be the guy they thought they were drafting earlier in the first round?
Yeah, I think it's the Dolphins for sure. Like you said, the defense, Brian Flores, one of the rare exceptions to the Belichick coaching tree rule of typical failure. What a job that man's done. Building that defense, the offense. Now, the offensive line is still not where you want, but you can't do everything in one off season. They have Jalen Waddle, right? You bring in Will Fuller, who's going to be suspended for a couple games, but you've added weapons around. And what I love of what the Dolphins have done is this. They've given Tua no excuses, right? There's not the hip thing anymore. He's off of that. He has had a full preseason and off season. So you put all the pieces around Tua, including his safety blanket from college and Jalen Waddle, to succeed. And if he is not, or you're unsure, you still have significant draft capital to go out next NFL draft and go after a different quarterback. So I love that's the situation that they put themselves in. And I just feel as a full, complete team, like the Patriots, no matter what, Bill Belichick's going to be there. They're never going to be an easy out. But the Cam Newton combo with Mac Jones, two totally different offenses with these quarterbacks. I feel the Dolphins are in a better position to be that threat and the more difficult out in the AFC East.
Well, and the Cam situation is interesting because, of course, he obviously isn't vaccinated because he's now been shut down for a few days, and it's more opportunity for Mac Jones. And knowing Belichick, and I'm sure the way he feels about guys committing to the team and being about we and not I, part of me thinks that this is going to be an extra opportunity for Mac Jones over the next little while to work with the ones. And I don't think they're going to be worried about hurting any feelings in New England if they think that this guy's ready to go and get on with the succession plan from Cam Newton, even though he was tabbed to be the week one starter heading into camp.
I just don't understand, Hustler, why you have these two types of quarterbacks on your team. Like, look at the Buffalo Bills. In really any team, you should try to the best of your ability to have your backup as somebody that can mirror to a certain degree your starter, so you don't have two totally different playbooks. Look in Buffalo. Hey, Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky. Same type of skill set, right? Mobile, big guy, big arm. You look at the Browns. Case Keenum, the backup to Baker Mayfield. Both can run that bootleg, and both can be mobile enough to scramble out of the pocket. You have to have that match. In New England, you need two totally separate playbooks. I don't get it, Hustler. Here's the thing with the Patriots. You got a 15th overall pick in Mac Jones. If you believe Cam Newton was really your guy, you would not have made that pick. So if you don't believe that Cam Newton is your quarterback for the next 5 years, which I don't see how you could at this point in his career, why are you even doing this? Like, go with a Brian Hoyer again. Have Mac Jones, who to me coming out of the draft had the highest floor and most NFL ready out of any quarterback. I also think he has the lowest ceiling talent-wise, but I think he could be the best day one guy for the Patriots. Why do you just not get that process started when if you have Cam Newton in and he gets hurt, you have to rejig that whole offense on the fly? Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I'm sure Josh McDaniels has been working on two different playbooks depending on who's in.
Right.
Andy McNamara is with us. You can follow him on Twitter at AndyMC81 and check out all of his work covering fantasy sports and more over at sportsnet.ca. Let's get over to the NFC for a minute. I'm fascinated by the NFC West. I think you could make a legitimate argument for all four teams to be a division winner going into the season before week one. Andy, how are you handicapping the NFC West?
That division is fascinating. Because like you said, you can run up and down the gauntlet a little bit to see who should go. After looking at it and thinking about it, I still feel the Seattle Seahawks should be viewed as the team to beat, because they have the best quarterback consistently, I feel. And in fantasy football, look, people want to sleep on Russell Wilson. The guy's been a top 3 to 5 fantasy quarterback pretty much his whole career, never lower than a QB 11. The guy keeps doing it, right? And you know, he had a bit of a fall off last year, but you have DK Metcalf, you have the defense that is still, it's not the Legion of Boom days, but it's still very good. I feel Seattle has the most continuity and has the best chance. The Kyler Murray situation with Arizona, the guy is dynamic, he can be amazing. But that size, I think at some point is going to catch up with him, Hustler. You got dinged up a little bit last year. You know, you still have DeAndre Hopkins, but they run the most plays in the NFL offensively. So you have to consider them. The Rams we talked about with Matthew Stafford, and the 49ers are probably the biggest wild card because I feel you can make a case for them to finish dead last or a team that could make the playoffs. It just really depends how it works out at quarterback and if they can get past their unlucky injury plagues that have gotten them the last 2 years.
You know, I'm just looking right now at the NFC. Where are we? NFC West. The Niners are the betting favorite to win the NFC West.
Really?
Here are the odds right now. Here are the odds right now at Coolbet. Plus 165 for the Niners. Plus 215 for the Rams. And that's actually gone up. That hasn't been changed. Last time I looked, it was 175 for the Niners and 200 for the Rams. The Seahawks are at plus 285. And the Cardinals are at plus 675. And, you know, you think about A.J. Green coming in, J.J. Watt. I mean, yes, they're notable players. Maybe they're a little bit older. But to me, those numbers should probably be a lot more sort of jammed together in the middle. I mean, I'm shocked that San Fran they were 6-10 last year, and we still don't know who's going to be playing quarterback as we get into the year for them. And, of course, the Rams. I thought the Rams would be the favorite based on how all in they are for this season and next with Matthew Stafford, with the trades that they've made. And then, of course, you can't count out Russell Wilson. But Arizona being so far down, I mean, to me, that's almost like a reputation odd because when you think about Zona, I mean, they haven't been, with the exception of that one run to the Super Bowl, you know, a perennial contender. And I think you could also make an argument that they have the worst coach in that division. But at the same time, Andy, there's a lot of talent there. I mean, to me, this is as wide open as any division right now. And it was quite surprising to see the discrepancy going from the Niners at the top to the Cards at the bottom.
That's shocking to me, Hustler. Those numbers are shocking. I'm totally with you. While do I think the Cardinals are going to win the division? I don't, but could you make a strong argument that they could? Yes. You know,
like it's 7-1, like more than double the odds of any other team in the division was not what I was expecting to see.
I'd lay some money down on that. Like, let's look at it this way. Would it really surprise you? Like, would it be like, oh, you'd fall off your chair if the Cardinals won the NFC West? Not me. You know, like I think other teams will win it, but I wouldn't be floored based on the offensive talent that they have. Rondale Moore, also a guy you want to keep an eye on for your fantasy teams a little bit later. He's been a riser. But like the 49ers still scare me from the sense that, is it Jimmy Garoppolo when Trey Lance gets in, the rawest of raw quarterbacks out of this rookie class? So does this guy get thrown in, and how does he look, really? Because everyone talks about preseason, and we know this, Hustler. Defenses show you nothing. That's as vanilla as it gets. So there's too much uncertainty for me to say, oh, yeah, for sure. I think the 49ers, honestly, I'd be less surprised if they finish last. Like that is how I really see this playing out. I think the 49ers are going to be third or fourth in that division, not at the top.
Well, and they're so dependent on that defense, which is elite when it is stacked and everyone's healthy. But as we've seen, it's been tough keeping guys healthy. And we'll see how this. Ryan Friesen, I see those tweets. Yeah, absolutely. Hit me up on Twitter. Just hit me a DM, either Twitter or Instagram at Hustlerama. We will make our little wager for the upcoming season. I look forward to that. Andy McNamara is with us. Andy, what about the NFC East? Who's getting your nickel to win that division this year?
Boy, gotta go with the Cowboys, man. Got to go with the Cowboys. I think this is going to be very, very close again, but in a more entertaining way. Like last year's close was because all the teams were terrible. Just rancid. But nobody wanted to win. I think that changes this year. Healthy Dak Prescott, that team was on a historic pace offensively. The defense got a bit better, but you're still going to have to be playing catch up. I think the Cowboys, yes. I'm not a Daniel Jones believer. I also don't trust Saquon Barkley. People are like, look at his legs. Well, yeah, he had pretty strong legs the last 2 years when the tendon got snapped as well, didn't he? I can't trust Saquon Barkley until I see Saquon Barkley for a full season. And it looks like he's going to be a slower starter there. Then we look at Washington. What's Fitzmagic? Well, this is another trade high situation if you want to go fantasy-wise for a sec, Hustler, and that's where you can almost bet as sure as you want that the first quarter of the season, Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to look great. If you draft him, have him look great, sell him after week 4, because you know at some point it's going to come crashing down in some capacity.
I'm in on WFT. I am in on, and not necessarily on Fitz as like my fantasy quarterback, but honestly, he's competent enough to put that team over the top. They've got an elite defense. I mean, you think about Chase Young and Montez Sweat killing quarterbacks all season long. And I mean, Ron Rivera gets the most out of his teams each and every year. And, you know, it was interesting. Terry McLaurin, if you look at the odds to be the receiving leader of this season, Terry McLaurin's in the top 3 right now. Antonio Gibson, I think, is criminally undervalued, both from a fantasy perspective and when we were talking about a guy that could potentially win a rushing title. Not that he's he's durable. He's going to get a ton of touches. He'll get a ton of opportunity. And a guy like that at 30-1 compared to Dalvin Cook at 5-1, I know where I think the value is when it comes to that. But I'll be honest. I mean, we were talking on the Lock Shop last week or the week before going through these, and I got on WFT at 3-1 to win the division. They're now plus 275, plus 175 to make the playoffs as well. I really do like them as a playoff team. Whether they'll be a wild card or win the division, I guess, is somewhat up to what happens in Dallas. And I'll say this. I mean, I realize there's a lot of juicy names that we'll be picking in fantasy drafts and whatnot, but especially, to be honest, it comes down to one guy, and it's Mike McCarthy. And I cannot back Mike McCarthy or one of his teams. I think he cost them in a big way last year. I don't know how long this marriage will go, but we know that if things don't start off well for the Cowboys with all those guys healthy, he'll be the one getting the heat this year. Last year was sort of a mulligan because of the injuries. But honestly, I think the Cowboys will be a fun team to pick for fantasy teams, but I have a hard time backing them as a heavy favorite in the NFC East.
The McCarthy factor is very fair. That's a very fair point. I'm with you. I think, too, we can't forget about the Eagles. I'm a Jalen Hurts truther. We've talked about it a lot together on these shows last year and coming out of the draft. I don't think he is given enough credit as a thrower of the football. And people will look at his completion percentage, say, Andy, 52%. Look at what he did, though. And I think he shows a maturity level beyond his years. First of all of the built-in excuses of, the Eagles were a disaster last year. He came in partway through the year, no preseason, yada, yada, yada. But he, instead of getting sacked like Carson Wentz did 1,000 times, he threw the football away. So what do you want out of your rookie quarterback? A guy who the play's done and he gets rid of the football, or someone who gets sacked and maybe has a little prettier completion percentages? That is a mature guy who can use his legs to move and make plays, which he did last year when he came in for the Eagles in limited time. But I believe, again, he is a better thrower of the football. The question to me is, do they have enough weapons to make themselves fantasy relevant? So that's why I don't consider them division contenders truly, but I believe we see a nice step forward for someone like Jalen Hurts.
The Bucs are obviously they're the NFC favorites, and hey, they're pretty much bringing back every starter from a team that enrolled and won the Super Bowl last year. So I totally get that. But let's talk about the other 3 teams in that division. I can't imagine Jameis Winston not being the guy behind center in New Orleans, especially. He looked great. And again, it was a preseason game against the Jags, so take that for what it's worth. But he certainly did look good. He's looked way better than Taysom Hill. I mean, if Taysom Hill gets the start, that's a union shop, if you know what I'm saying. He's been there for a while, and he's got the spot. To me, it'll be Jameis. It'll be interesting to see how they use Hill, whether he does some of the things that he used to do while Breeze was in, or whether he just literally is a backup or a change of pace guy. Atlanta's strange. I mean, they moved Julio Jones. They draft Pitts. They've still got Matt Ryan, and Mike Davis is a guy that I sort of forgot that he's the number 1 guy there now. I mean, he'll be probably a good value pick later on. And then there's Carolina. And I'll be honest, I am high on Sam Darnold this year. I think that the connection with Matt Rule is going to really help him in his second act. And, they've got some playmakers there, especially when Christian McCaffrey is in. Outside of the Bucks, how do you rank those teams going in, and which team excites you or doesn't when it comes to fantasy, Andy?
Well, I think fantasy-wise, Carolina's probably the one that jumps out the most. And to your point, I think Sam Darnold does have a great opportunity to reinvent himself. Can he shake all the nonsense that Adam Gase put in his head in New York and kick that away? I hope he can, because talent-wise, the upside is huge. And you throw in Christian McCaffrey, who's healthy again. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson just upped up for 2 more years. So you got those guys right there. There's a lot of talent. I'd feel comfortable going with any of those pieces I just mentioned. I think Sam Darnold, while in a redraft league, I would not want Sam Darnold as my QB1. One of my strategies, Hustler, is always to try to get 2 quarterbacks out of my draft just to have bye week coverage or for trade bait. Do I want Sam Darnold as a guy I pick up as my second with upside? I sure do. Absolutely. There's a lot there. For Atlanta, this is how I feel. Kyle Pitts is the key to that whole offense being fantasy relevant, and really, I think, real life relevant. Because if he does not come on and is used as a weapon, not a tight end, not blocking anybody, just go catch the football and score touchdowns. If he is used that way and converts that, it opens up Calvin Ridley to WR1 heights that he hasn't seen yet. If Kyle Pitts does not, or gets injured, or is slow to start, what else are you working with in Atlanta? You could just double, triple team if you want. Calvin Ridley. Mike Davis faded quickly when he took over from Christian McCaffrey in that backfield. That's not scaring anybody. So really, to me, it's, can Kyle Pitts come in and make hay quick? If he does, that offense can hum. If he doesn't, boy, that's going to be rough for Atlanta.
Now, what about the Saints? Michael Thomas burned everybody last year. He hasn't played yet. I know people are shying away from him in drafts.
Yeah.
You've got the quarterback situation, but it's still a Sean Payton offense that'll have a number of games against some teams that frankly aren't very good. Are you in or out on the Saints to be competitive in that division?
I think competitive, yes. You know what? I'm almost sort of viewing them in the same vein as the Patriots right now, where because of how they're coached, you're never going to be able to walk in and shut them out 50-0. These are not walkover guys. I hope it's Jameis Winston because he gives the better all-around quarterback play and options than Taysom Hill. Now, does Taysom Hill scoot in and does his usual goal line garbage or whatever, and just because Sean Payton hates fantasy football owners? Maybe. But if Jameis Winston's in the ball game, Alvin Kamara's value is so much higher. If it's Taysom Hill, we saw Alvin Kamara's fantasy value drop like a rock in the ocean when he gets in there because he's running the football. So with Michael Thomas out, I look at Traquan Smith. Adam Troutman, the rookie tight end, has been getting a little bit of hype, but rookie tight ends outside of a Kyle Pitts type usually make me a bit nervous because it takes him 2-3 years to go in. Fantasy-wise, I don't love them. Real-life-wise, if Winston, with his LASIK eye surgery that he got, and if he drunk in what he got from Drew Brees, if he can cut down on those interceptions, we know that dude has the arm talent like few others. So they'll be competitive. Just depends if they try to get too cute and use too much Taysom Hill.
All right, Andy, before we go, and this has been a lot of fun, it's great to have you back, and hopefully we can do this on the reg throughout the season.
Yes.
There are a lot of people that are getting ready for their drafts this weekend or next week, and they're wondering, Andy, who are the sleepers? Who are the late round guys that can make a difference? Who's on your little cheat list that you've got circled? If this guy's available at this time, you want to take him. Give us a few guys.
Yeah, you're going to want Trey Sermon for the 49ers, absolutely at running back. And I look at these as positions that have scarcity for true starters and who can jump in. And we'll talk redraft situations specifically. I think Trey Sermon and Michael Carter are two guys you really have to look at as running backs once the first bunch goes. Because while they're not starters right now, the situations around them and the players in front of them are injury prone, and they should get opportunity. Those are two guys I really like. Wide receiver, Donovan Peoples-Jones from my Browns has been spectacular. He's been like the winner of camp because not only is he the tallest wide receiver, as he have developing chemistry continued from last year with Baker Mayfield who's catching everything, he's also the best blocker. That's what doesn't get talked about enough because that way you can keep him on the field the whole time. The question, of course, is Odell Beckham Jr. factor. Long-term, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, is going to take over as the wide receiver. This year, though, somebody right near the end, keep on the bench. Maybe he gets opportunities, maybe he doesn't. But that's another guy you definitely want to keep an eye on. And I do think, because tight end is so thin, Adam Troutman out of the Saints. Again, I don't want him as my top tight end, but somebody later on in drafts, keep an eye because of the fewer playmakers on that team. Troutman could be someone you get late and you keep on your bench for now.
Andy, before we go, let people know where they can find you and what you've got cooking. I imagine there's a lot of fantasy contact being cranked out of the Andy Mac Dome on a daily basis. Right
yes, there is. Yeah, on Twitter at AndyMC81, and for the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League on Twitter and Instagram at UFAFL_UFFS. And Hustler, I'll tell you this too, for your listeners, your viewers, and everybody else, I'm going to be releasing today a Madden 22, EA Sports Madden 22 giveaway contest where you can win your own free copy from my buddies at EA Sports. But you're going to have to be following at UFAFL_UFFS and myself to learn how that's going to happen. So Madden copy free. You want it? It's going to be easy to get.
Andy MC81 on Twitter. We count down to week 1 and our matchup between the Browns and Chiefs, my friend. Thanks for doing this. Always great talking to you, my bud.
Oh, love it, Hustler. Anytime, man. We'll talk to you guys soon.
There he is, Andy McNamara, the ball of energy personified, dropping the fantasy knowledge with this here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Man, that was such a fun convo. I'm ready for a draft. I'm ready for a few Little Brown Jugs as well. Of course, our friends at Little Brown Jug have been great supporters of Winnipeg Sports Talk, and it's great having them on board, and it's been great enjoying the incredible LBJ products all summer long. If you haven't tried the flagship brand, then 1919. Next time you're out at a local restaurant or at a bottle shop, you're definitely going to want to pick it up, along with the summer variety pack featuring the new Little Brown Jug Summer Lager and the Hefeweizen, which we've been loving all summer long. Now, they don't do the same day delivery, but they will deliver to you. If you order before 2 p.m. on Wednesday to Saturday, you'll be getting next day delivery. As well as if you know you've got something coming up, you got people over, you can simply schedule a delivery at a time that works for you. The Gold Eyes had a big win, a doubleheader sweep yesterday over the Milwaukee Milkmen. They're going to be in some big-time games when it comes to their playoff race, 3 games back. And what better way to enjoy a baseball game than out at Craft Beer Corner? And from August 31st until September 6th, the great taste of Little Brown Jug will be available at Craft Beer Corner at Shaw Park for the Winnipeg Gold Eyes games. So, whether you're popping down to check them out on the patio, at the tap room, and at the brewery on William Avenue, getting in a bottle shop, or enjoying it at a Gold Eyes game or around, make sure you try the great taste of Little Brown Jug. Assiniboia Downs. We will get to our picks. I don't think Remo or my picks were very good last night, but it went a lot better for somebody else than it did for us. Last night, the jackpot high five went a single winner on a 20-cent base wager, and somebody won $136,934. Darren Dunn said that the excitement had been building all year around the pool, and what a great outcome for one of our players to walk away with such a huge payday. The jackpot pick 5, which requires the correct selection of 5 consecutive winners, continues to build. The jackpot pick 5 stands at over $143,000 with a minimum guaranteed payout of $250,000 if there's a single ticket winner before the end of the week. Of course, you'll have another chance to win big tonight at Assiniboia Downs. Live racing goes at 7:30, parade to post. And you can check out the ASD live channel with Stretch and Kirk. They'll give you all the picks beforehand. They'll get going in and around 6:45 tonight. You can, of course, also bet at the HPIBet.com, where Remo and I make our picks every day, and we'll do that before we finish up the program. And a big shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend. We've got the BMW Championship beginning tomorrow. The golf world's still buzzing over Tony Finau's big win at the Northern Trust, and the outpouring of support for Finau has been so great. I'm a longtime Team Tony guy. There's been some tough losses, but to see him win the way he did on Monday afternoon was phenomenal. He'll be one of the top players. Well, actually, he's ranked number 1 heading into the BMW. As far as Breezy Bend goes, though, they've got a great pro shop sale on right now. Buy one, get one on tons of merchandise. So if you're in the neighborhood, pop by and see him at the pro shop. And if you're thinking about a great golfing home for you and your family next year, give Corey Johnson a call at the golf course or find out more at breezybend.ca on how you can make Breezy Bend your golfing home for the 2022 season. All right, let's get Remis back in here. I do want to get to the Coolbet lines for today. And before I do that, thanks to everyone that tuned in to the Lock Shop before we got going for today's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're listening on the podcast, it's the betting pod I do with Dustin Nielsen of TSN in Edmonton, of course, who's calling all these Bomber games. Dusty will be in Winnipeg on the weekend. Looking forward to that. We have our Lock Shop partner parlay. It's boosted up to 4-1. It's the White Sox tonight against the Blue Jays plus 1.5. The BC Lions money line over the Ottawa Redblacks, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats money line over the Montreal Alouettes. It came in just around 3-1. It's been boosted up to 4-1, so plus 400 right now. If you go to Coolbet, just on the main page, you'll see the Lock Shop boosted partner parlay. You can click on that and you'll get our parlay. Play with us at 4-1. And of course, if you haven't played at Coolbet, maybe you're thinking about opening an account for the beginning of NFL season. Use the promo code WST. You'll get a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200 over at Coolbet. So the Lock Shop parlay's up. I'm in on it. Lions and Ticats to win, and White Sox plus 1.5 runs tonight against the Blue Jays. Speaking of that game with the Blue Jays, they are first pitch just after 6 p.m. tonight. Bobby Ray on the hill. Jays a slight favorite at minus 114. White Sox minus 103. And we've also got some odds for the World Women's Hockey Championship. Germany at the Czech Republic. Czech's a big favorite, minus 435. And I'm not sure if you're going to be tuning in for the Hungary-Denmark game, but pretty interesting odds. Denmark minus 167, Hungary plus 130. So whether you want to get on the BMW Championship, baseball tonight, the Lock Shop partner parlay, NFL futures, it's all there right now at Coolbet. And don't forget to use the promo code WST if you haven't played there before. Remo, lots to unpack from the last hour or so. Great stuff with Andy McNamara, one of my favorite guys to talk to. And of course, Farhan was phenomenal with the latest on what's happening in and around the National Hockey League. All we're missing is some legitimate hockey news, as the entire hockey world is out fishing, at least for the next couple of weeks before our training camp gets going.
Yeah, where is the hockey news? We did have some hockey stuff on Twitter. Someone asked us about Mark Scheifele, if he still has to serve his suspension. I said yes.
Yep.
One game. And they asked, what can he do preseason still? I would think preseason is okay.
Oh, yeah.
Preseason. But that first opening day regular season, he's a no-no. So, yeah, no hockey news, really. But, hey, fantasy football, really? Andy got me fired up.
Totally. I'll say this. The Women's World is going on. Canada shut out the Swiss yesterday, 5-0. They're at 3-0. And tomorrow, we still don't have a line on Coolbet, but tomorrow we'll get Canada versus the U.S. in what we expect will, in all likelihood, be a preview of the gold medal game. And you know what? Hillary Knight, what an incredible player she is for the United States. She set the record for goals at the Women's Worlds yesterday, passing the great Cami Granato, one of the real pioneers and trailblazers of the women's game. And if I'm not mistaken, a Hockey Hall of Famer.
Yes, absolutely. And one other thing, Huss, you were mentioning you wanted to do the Ticats on your thing. We did have some notes from Ticats practice today from Matt Giannetti. Orlando Steinauer says defensive end Jared Davis, knowing or unknowingly, broke the COVID protocols, and he is not eligible to play against Montreal this week. So that is a big loss for them. And he also said Dane Evans took reps with the first team offense. So I don't know what that means, but something to monitor. But Jared Davis, he's a big force on defense, so that's a loss for them.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more reports like this, and this is sort of why I asked Farhan how this news in Edmonton is resonating throughout the league, because I really do believe that, I think like with everything with the pandemic, sometimes you get a little bit lax, you get a little bit comfortable. The guys are vaccinated, or most of them, so what do we have to worry about? And then things like what happened in Edmonton can happen. So, I think the teams are tightening up their rules. I think they're reinforcing to players how important it is to follow them and to stay negative so that they can actually play in games. And I don't think there'll be a lot of tolerance for any sort of intentional breaking of the rules. I don't have the details on what happened with Jared Davis, but I mean, going forward, I think things are going to be getting tighter, especially as we see this expected fourth wave, come to communities across Canada, and, the league try to deal with it as best as possible to keep their games safe for players and fans, but most importantly, have the games played.
Yeah, and it's kind of, interesting. I remember you talk about, players breaking protocol knowingly or unknowingly. I remember last year with Cleveland baseball team, Mike Clevenger, and I think someone else knowingly broke, and they basically just got dumped off the team, and they got dealt because the team wasn't going to put up.
They had to drive home to Cleveland themselves.
Yeah, I forget
they
who
got him a car and said, "You guys drive back."
Yeah, I forget who the teammate was, but Clevenger, yeah, they bumped him, and they had they had Carlos Carrasco on their team who had was recovering from cancer. So I mean, we're gonna. It's tough. People are like, stick to sports. I mean, it's tough to avoid here. We're talking about canceled games. We're talking about players missing games, fantasy implications. Most importantly, betting. So you gotta know the info. You gotta have it out there.
Well, speaking of that. And great COVID takes, or terrible COVID takes as they were. I just knew something was up when I saw Brandon Prust was trending today in Canada. And I didn't think it was because he was signing another deal in the National Hockey League. So you can find that out for yourself. A definite Mensa member there, Brandon Prust, with some of his takes on it all. We have a couple things I want to get to, but why don't we do let's get these picks in first for tonight at the races, Remo, and then we can hit some of the other more random topics before we get to the top of the hour. I can go first if you'd like. I am ready to go. My bets are in for tonight's races, which is good because sometimes I'll make them on the show and forget to put them in, and then I have to make a late one for but we're going to start off with race number 1. We're going to go a 3-5 Quinella. One of your favorites, Sophie McTrophy, along with Witt's Girl. And Sophie McTrophy's been awesome. Witt's Girl's the favorite, or right there with Barbie's Quest. The Witt's Girl always seems to come in. Sophie McTrophy is actually being slept on. It's the 4th of 5 horses in this one. But anyways, I'm going to go with that, a 3-5 in the first race. And race number 2, we're going to do the triactor wheel. 2-3-5, Lulu's Lightning, Lady Got Away, and Chris's Defense. So that'll be a $6 bet. We'll go with the $4 Quinella for race number 3. And we're going with the 3-6. He Kid, that's been good to me before. And Hatshepsut. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
Hatshepsut.
Hatshepsut. There we go. 3-6 for the Quinella in that race. And then the final race we're going to get to is number 4. And we're going to go with the triactor. We're going to take a couple of the favorites. Number 1, My Princess Ellie. Number 3, Beautiful Babe. And then finish it up with Witt's Question. So we'll get that on there. Fire it up. Hopefully get some winners and get back on the right track after a dry day yesterday. Where are you going today?
Okay, I'm changing it up here. I'm going hard. I got 2 picks to win. I need to get back in the W column, keeping it simple. Race 5, horse 2, 10's Legacy, about Pearl Jam 10. Excellent album. I'm assuming it's Pearl Jam 10. It has to be, right? So, or Mookie Blaylock, either one. But 10's Legacy to win, $10. Bam! I'm putting my big old church bells on the table here.
Church bells.
2 horses. The other one, I've been meaning to bet this horse to win for a while. I keep forgetting. I didn't realize Sophia McTrophy was on the board, but I will go with Gooch Express. Bet on the Gooch, $10 to win. Those are my 2 horses, $10 each bet. We are changing our fortunes. It's been a long slide here for me. I need some winners. 2 nights ago, I did like 4 Quinellas or 3 or 4, and I got first place right in all of them, but I couldn't get the second place. So let's get one. Let's get some winners. I'm fired up.
Peppermint Patty says that Hatshepsut was an Egyptian queen. There you go. Well, we've got the there's a little bit of intel on one of the interesting names that we've got.
Todd Fertani says Ten's legacy is about Dale Hawerchuk. Can't lose.
Oh, yes.
So there we go.
I love it, Todd. I love it. Oh, and Mitch, the Godfather, asking, what about Dustin Penner? Yes, we're actually planning a Winnipeg Sports Talk COVID roundtable with Dustin Penner, Brandon Prust, and Theo Fleury. It's going to be a really, really interesting show at some point. Obviously, I'm joking, folks. But yeah, you can get all that stuff online if you need it. Reem, the OnlyFans, in the least shocking news ever, has decided that they are going back on their decision that they are going to ban sexually explicit material, realizing that once they did that, they would have 3 to 5 active accounts, in the least surprising news of the day.
Yeah, here's the official announcement from OnlyFans. Thank you for making your voices heard. We have secured assurances necessary to support our diverse creator community and have suspended the planned October policy change. OnlyFans stand for inclusion. We will continue to provide a home. So, I mean, they realized where their bread was buttered, and they're going to just work with, the existing market rather than trying to be something else. So,
yeah, well, I think what they realized was that over the course of the last week since they announced it, probably 80% of their entire clientele was figuring out where they were going to move their content to, and decided to put the brakes on that one very, very quickly. So, yes, the long international nightmare is over for everyone that was worried about OnlyFans. We talked about Teddy Bridgewater with Andy getting the QB job in Denver and the Rams acquisition of Sony Michel. Urban Meyer did make it official today that Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick, is going to be the starting quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, watching them on Monday night against the Saints, I mentioned this yesterday. I think was getting visions of David Carr in his first year as the number 1 overall pick with the Houston Texans, getting sacked every second play. We'll see how they can handle protecting Trevor Lawrence. I'm not expecting a lot from the Jags, but I do believe, Remis, that this is a team with the amount of talent they have there. And we'll see what happens with Herb now in the NFL on the sidelines, what they can do. I would not at all be surprised if we were talking, maybe not this year, I doubt this year, but next year is the Jags a team that completely turned around their fortunes with so much young talent. Although, of course, the Travis Etienne injury, knocking him out for his rookie season, certainly didn't help.
Hey, James Robinson was one of the best backs last year. Laviska Shenault had a great rookie season. They got some weapons there on offense. We'll see if they can turn it around. I mean, he's bringing the hair, Trevor Lawrence. We'll see how it goes. But rookie QB on a bad team isn't a recipe for success. So we'll see.
Could be a lot of picks, but certainly I think there'll be a lot of yards. They're going to need to score some points to stay in these games. And as I mentioned, if you're talking fantasy, garbage time counts just the same, and they could definitely be in some of those situations. Two other funny things from the internet. This is funny. I don't know. It's a little bit absurd. The Nirvana Nevermind, which was, what did that come out in, 93, 94?
91, I believe.
91. So we're talking 30 years ago. Of course, there was a baby on the cover underwater of that album. And if I'm to believe the report from Variety, the baby photographed on Nevermind is now suing Nirvana, alleging child pornography. I don't really even know what to make about this one, Reem. It's about as bizarre a story as you'll know, especially considering that I believe the Nirvana estate is obviously long gone. Kurt Cobain's no longer with us. I'm not sure whether that goes to Courtney Love or Dave Grohl or Chris Novoselic, but I can't imagine that's not something they were expecting to get a note from a lawyer that they needed to go to court about.
Yes. Estate of Kurt Cobain named in there with members of the band. Also, the old drummer before Dave Grohl, who had no part in the recording, was named. And I mean, the guy has been, I don't know, I guess the last, for the 10th, 15th anniversaries, 20th anniversaries, he's like taking, recreating the picture. And to be honest, I kind of feel bad for the guy. I mean, he's obviously put in a situation by his parents where they let him be photographed nude at 4 months old to be the cover of this album. And I don't think anyone knew how much it would explode. And it's probably tough to deal with it, but I don't think he's suing the right people. If you should be upset, anyone, be upset with the parents. For me, there's so much temptation to take all these cute pictures of your kid and put it on social media, but I mean, they don't have a say in that. I think you got to be careful of what you're, putting your child through at a young age. I mean, 30 years later, the guy goes on a date with someone. He's like, oh, by the way, I was the baby in the Nevermind album cover. I'm sure you're going through stuff, and it sounds like they really didn't get a lot of money. It sounds like there wasn't consent for him, so we'll see how this goes. But I don't think he's suing the right people here. That's just me.
Okay, final story of the day before we go. And get this wedding no-show thing. This is unbelievable. And now there is etiquette when it comes to, weddings, if you go, you're expected to give a gift or certainly help out the couple with the cost of the wedding and all that stuff. And, there is a level of respect involved in replying to a wedding, saying you're going to be there. And it's a pretty bum-ass move to say you're going and then not show up and not do anything for it. That being said, I don't know if I can go as far as this one individual did. Remo, if you want to pull that up, we can.
Sure.
We can read this. So imagine yourself, you're about to have a wedding, you invite everyone says they're coming, and there's a couple people that decided not to show up. Remo, read it out if you can. I have a hard time seeing for it in the thing.
Breakfast Television tweeted this out, and Bill Lewis from Huffington Post, I guess, was the source. And they said, this invoice is being sent to you because you confirmed seat at the wedding reception during the final head count. The amount is the cost of your seats. Because you didn't call or give us proper notice, you wouldn't be in attendance. The amount is what you owe us for paying for your seat in advance. You can pay via Zelle or PayPal. Reach out, just let me know which method works for you. Thank you. Thank you! Exclamation mark.
So if I get this straight, some people no-showed for the wedding, and then whoever was so angry, they decided that there was no thank you card going out to those folks for not showing. No, an invoice for $120. I understand being a little bent out of shape about it, and maybe you don't feel the same way about those people that no-showed the wedding, but this is an over-the-top move to send out invoices after the fact. I mean, I still can't get over
Did
that.
Did they give a gift and not attend? I think that factors in. I would be pissed off because that is two people, who you could have sent, the opportunity cost. You could have sent the invite to two other people who would have attended. It is a major douche move to not, to send an improper RSVP and no show. It's pretty inconsiderate, but I don't think I would send them a bill. I just would, and I just would end the friendship and be like, okay, these people don't matter to me anymore. They're not considerate people. I don't think I'd send them the bill for $240.
I'm just imagining getting it. Like, you're checking the mail and, oh, there's something. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we didn't make it to that wedding. And then opening it up with an invoice for $240.
I am seeing a lot of mixed reactions. Some people say that this is okay to send them the invoice, and some people are saying no, but I think the people are definitely in the wrong, and I think you can approach it however way you want it.
Like Tracy says, LOL, that's awesome. I'd not do that, but I can see why they did. And Bardo says the no-shows should be invoiced. And like, I get the theory in it. It's just actually doing it is the is the thing that's just hard to actually make happen. Now, before we go, Shark Mifley, have you guys talked about the milk crate challenge? We have made a couple references to it. I know I sent you an elite version of the Colts mascot doing the milk crate challenge successfully. And to be honest, Reem, that's the only successful milk crate challenge completion I have seen yet on the internet. Everything else is just people nearly killing themselves with disastrous falls as they try to do something that on the surface looks pretty easy.
Yeah, milk crates, man, they're wobbly. They're not stable. Watch out for them. And if you want to get a lot of likes, I guess where do you even get milk crates? Where are these people getting them?
Well,
I haven't seen a milk crate in a long time.
No, I haven't either, and they're cheap and you can get them. But someone is now selling them on the internet. I think $87 US for 6 milk crates. So I don't know what the markup is on that, but I would say it's in the 10,000% considering what it costs to make and the accessibility to them. But I would suggest that here's the Colts mascot. He does a great job. And again, the whole time I'm expecting this is going to end terribly. And if you were the mascot, you're doing this for content. If say he wiped out and broke his back, what sort of a workers' compensation claim could you file?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know, but there he is, Blue, the Colts mascot, doing the. And how many views? Like this video got 1.3 million views, so hopefully he got like a pay raise.
It's
for
brilliant
that.
it's brilliant when it comes to content, because anytime you see the guy go up 1-2, you're staying till the end. Anyways, a fun way to finish up the program. Mike McIntyre is going to join us, and we haven't had a lot of Jet stuff to talk about. It was fun to chat with Jamie yesterday, but Mike will join us tomorrow. Looking forward to that. We'll discuss his 2-part series with Josh Morrissey, a little bit more on the Jets, the NHL offseason, see what his golf game's been. That'll be quite a bit of fun. And then really dive into Bombers Stamps on Friday afternoon with Eddie Tate of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But I do want to thank Andy Mack for joining us, and of course Farhan Lalji. Great to see everybody with us here in the chat, and of course to everyone listening every day on the podcast. If you are a podcast listener, anytime you can go in and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and a little review. Greatly appreciated. And of course, we also want to shout out our sponsors: Canadian Club, Royal Sports, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Paramount Services Limited, Not Autocorp, Boston Pizza, Breezy Bend Country Club, Assiniboia Downs, Little Brown Jug Brewing, and of course our betting partner, Coolbet Canada. Don't forget, you have until first pitch tonight against the Blue Jays to jump in on that Lock Shop podcast, or Lock Shop partner parlay that's boosted up to 4-1. You can do that at Coolbet. And if you haven't checked out the Lock Shop before, throw it into Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you'll be able to download it and get it on a weekly basis. We'll get back to doing 2 episodes a week as we get into week 1 of the National Football League. All right, for Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks, everyone, for making us a part of your day. We'll catch you tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great night.
Sorry, I can't find the ending screen.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.